We have our first squash of the season, Mrs. W.
We do.
It wasn't planned. Obviously, the winds and weather that we had while we were away has caused that to fall off.
Yeah.
By looking at the others, I think we'll be harvesting them this week. This is a curry squash. Really lovely. I have a lovely sort of sweet, nutty taste. We really do like these. And the great thing about squash is they store for such a long time. It's not unheard of in the Wilson household that we can still be eating our squash next April. So they really are a worthwhile crop. Now, we've actually just got back from Malvern. We had a wonderful time there and we met lots of lovely people. And you'll see a bit more of that on a future video. But in today's video, we need to give you our top tips for the month of October. Hello and welcome back to the Newdig Norfolk Gardener. We've seen temperatures starting to plummet now, and during the month of October, of course, toward the end we will see the clocks fall back, and that means that the light levels for our vegetables will be significantly reduced. That's the reason why you get these plants in fairly early in the year so they can get a good head start. They're well on their way, and then we can get the harvest we want later on this year and into, well, what will be 2025 next year. Now, for my first top tip, it is to keep on top of de-leafing your brassicas when the leaves are no longer doing any good for these plants. You can see on this one here, this happens to be a purple sprouting broccoli that will hopefully give us harvest come November. This leaf is not doing anything for this plant. It's got lots of lovely big green leaves up here. Oh look, there's a cabbage.
Oh,
white caterpillar, Mrs. W.
How did he get in there? How dare he?
Let's have him.
Oh.
It just goes to show you do have to keep on top of your plants. But yeah, getting back to my tip, make sure you do remove these leaves, because all that's going to happen is that now that we've gotten to this month of October, Mr. Slug will come in and think, this is my job, this is my role. And it is. It's their role in the garden to actually tidy it up. And it will only encourage them to go after your plants. Now for my next top tip, it's beans. You can see over this arch that there are no more flowers, and we won't get any more flowers. It's getting too cold now. The beans that are left on it, we're now going to leave to make their beans, and they will be the seeds that we sow next year. And of course, once you've done that and you've taken your harvest of seed, you just need to cut them right down to the ground. Don't pull them out, cut them right down to the ground. Leave the roots in there, because beans do fix nitrogen from the air, and there will be a store of them in their roots. And that all helps to put nitrogen levels back into your soil. One thing we do want is a cabbage for today. Now here in the UK at least, and where we garden in our Zone 9A garden, we can leave our cabbages to actually stay in the ground. It doesn't get cold enough to actually hurt them. But if you do live in a colder climate, where you do get lots of frost from now onwards, or even, dare I say it, lots of snow on the ground, you're going to harvest your cabbages and de-leaf them, the outside leaves, keep them in a cool shed, just somewhere where the temperature won't drop below freezing. But when you do that, do make sure you just go through the leaves and find any Mr. Slugs that might be in there. If not, they'll be feasting on your cabbages long before you do. And you'll be surprised that cabbages, they will keep for actually quite some time if you harvest them and keep them. You may find at some point that some of the outer leaves have gone a bit funny, but all you need to do is just peel those away and it will reveal a lovely cabbage underneath. For my next tip, cut down ferny shoots of asparagus down to soil level when they have turned yellow. When your blackberries and autumn raspberries have finished fruiting, and ours won't be too far away, then you need to cut all of the stems down that fruited this year right down to the ground. Well, the raspberries, you have a window between now and next February. With the blackberry, you really want to be getting these sorted out as soon as they have finished fruiting. And while we're on the subject of soft fruit, it's a really good time to have a look at those catalogues, go online, and if you don't grow soft fruit yet and you really want to have a go, then choose the varieties you want and get them ordered. Because as we go into November, that's a really good time to start planting those brand new plants out into your garden. Now as we get into October, of course, it's going to get a fair bit cooler. Looking at the temperature gauge here in the Polly, it was only 4.6 degrees overnight last night while we were away. It's only 16 degrees in here now. So it's a good time to move your citrus plants indoors. As long as they don't get frosted, they're fine. So you have a polytunnel like ours or a greenhouse that doesn't freeze, they'll be fine there. If not, just take them down to your house. What they don't really want to be is in really high heat. They need to be in a cool room. Now that we're in October, there's much more rain falling from the sky, and we shall no longer need the hose. So it's a good tip to coil up your hoses and get them put away into your shed over the winter period. If you leave them out here in the garden and we get a really frosty night, it can freeze any water that might be still in the hose pipe and it will split it. Then of course you're going to need to buy more hose piping. So to save you doing that, coil them up, put them safely away in your shed. Right at the top of the video you saw me with a curry squash that was ready for us when we got back. These butternuts are also there. And during this week they will have their harvest too. They've gone that familiar lovely tan colour, and any further ripening that they might need can be done actually inside our house. And that's a good tip if you do live in a really good cold area. If they're at this stage, you can just harvest them now, take them into your house, and they will finish their fruiting process. But for my next tip, these will be gone during the next 5 days. So any of your plots that you've taken your final harvest from, take the rest of the foliage, add it to your compost heap. We still want to be making compost. We try to make compost around here all year round. But the compost that you've made this year now begin to spread on your empty plots. If it's not perfect, it doesn't matter too much, because we're coming into the autumn and winter period when the rains, the frosts and the winds will break it down even further. And it will give all of the soil life a chance to start taking that down into your plots. The soil temperature will still remain quite warm, certainly here in our New Dig Norfolk garden, until December time, and they'll get to work on that immediately. That means that this plot will be ready for us to plant into in early 2025. We have some amazing chilies here, Mrs. W.
Yeah, they're wonderful, aren't they?
Look at those lovely jalapenos.
Yeah. Beautiful.
But at some time during the month of October, it's going to be time to clear these plants out. In fact, for myself and Mrs. W, it will begin during the next 5 to 10 days. You can see that the plants are starting to die back. What is starting to go red should go red. But any of these green tomatoes, they're not likely to go red. So yeah, sometime during October, clear your undercover spaces and then prep them ready to get your overwintering plants in. For tomatoes that are still green, there are plenty of chutneys and pickles that you can make with them. And you know, if you have tomatoes a bit like this, or even this one is starting to go, you can take those off the vine, take them down to your house, and over the next few months they will continue to ripen so that you can enjoy tomatoes all the way up to Christmas. Now, of course, if we've cleared our greenhouse and we've cleared our polytunnel and we want to grow good crops over winter, bearing in mind that the light levels will dramatically reduce right at the very end of the month when the clocks go back. So, at the same time as clearing them, take the trouble to wash and clean your undercover spaces, both inside and out.
I was definitely need doing. That's terrible. Oh, wow.
That will ensure that you can get the maximum light penetration into your undercover spaces, but also it will help to eradicate any pests that may be around. We shall be having a good hunt for Mr. Slug, because for my next tip, slugs will start to become more apparent in your garden. It's much damper, there is less sunlight, so they will be after your plants, and in particular in the undercover spaces. We've already noticed some of our pak choy we had in there have been had by Mr. Slugs.
Yes.
So we're going to have to get the bear traps out again and start capturing those slugs before they feed, before we do. At this time of year, you can water much more sparingly. In fact, for the tomatoes, I wouldn't bother watering them at all anymore. They need to concentrate all of their efforts on ripening as much fruit as possible before you empty the undercover spaces. But once you do get your overwintering crops in, then just bear in mind they don't need watering every other day or every 3 days. They're not going to do a huge amount of growing. They're going to get to a certain size, and then they're going to almost slow down and hardly grow at all until we go into the new year, certainly by February, when the temperatures do begin to rise again and we have just that little more of light levels. So don't leave them sitting in pools of water. So have a look, let your eyes and your hands be a guide as to when you think they might want watering. If it's dry like this, and if you insert your finger and there's no moisture, which there isn't there, then give your plants some water. But you'll probably then find you won't need to do that again for another week or two. And as we get right to the back end of this year, you might only be watering once a month. So go easy on the watering. You don't want your plants to rot. They are our top tips for the month of October. One thing I would like to say is a big thank you to all your amazing comments that we've had over the last 2 or 3 videos. They have been amazing. We really do appreciate it. So do keep those coming. And in particular for this video, if you have any other top tips that you think that we as gardeners need to be doing during the month of October, then do add them in the comments section. We do love to get them, and it helps everybody else. Also, the likes. We've had so many likes, so please do keep those coming. Getting likes in the hundreds now on our videos, and that's just absolutely amazing. I can't thank you enough. And it goes without saying, if you're watching us for the first time and you want to see more of what we do, then of course don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Have a great gardening week, everybody, won't you all? And we shall see you on the next one.